Welcome to a Bottlenecks Institute podcast where we explore the critical obstacles to constrain human progress. We are currently featuring a special series on AI safety and security, Evolutionary Safe AI, examining the fundamental challenges we must overcome to ensure safe advancement in AI and AGI development. I'm your co-host, Parnian Barekatain.
And I'm your co-host, Ian Derrington. Today, we're joined by Emmett Shear, a seasoned entrepreneur with over 2 decades of experience. He is best known as the co-founder and CEO of Twitch. Presently, Emmett is co-founder of Softmax, where they are pioneering research in AI alignment with something called organic alignment. Emmett, welcome to the show. Perfect. We'd really like to know your hot take on it. Will AI terminate humanity?
It's certainly the scale of power it could terminate humanity. Nuclear weapons could still be the end of humanity. A non-zero list of things that could kill everybody. Nuclear weapons, bioweapons, some kind of global ecological collapse, AI. There's probably other stuff we don't know, asteroid hitting the Earth, something like that. So it's in the scary short list, that's for sure.
Certainly. So it's non-zero risk. And
Yeah.
maybe that might be some of the reasons why you're getting into organic alignment. I was wondering if you could describe that and why you're working on that right now.
Yeah. So when I first left Twitch almost 3 years ago, I knew I wanted to get into AI because I wanted to get into AI when I was in college as a CS major, but then I took some AI classes and I was like, we're just not ready. It was clear the field was stagnant. We didn't have a tractable approach to get much better. It turns out that what we were waiting for GPUs, waiting for more compute. All of the techniques I learned in school were correct. It's just with 2001 computers, you couldn't really make it happen. And so I put AI on the shelf. When I left Twitter, I was like, it's the time. But I treated it, I just had a kid and I was treating it as this back burner problem where I was like, I'm going to get smart about AI. I'm going to learn about it. I'm going to try to understand what's going on. I get to be an independent researcher. This is the best. I started going out, talking to people, trying to figure out what's going on, learning about the current state of affairs. I wound up doing AI related consulting and work. And so then when the open AI thing happened, I was on the short list of people who had executive experience and publicly knew about AI. And so I got sucked into that. I had gotten this sign from the universe. And I'm not the kind of person who believes in signs from the universe, but this felt like, oh, I see. This is not the time for me to be sitting around taking my time. It really impressed on me how things were happening fast. And I was either going to be part of that or not. I was supposed to be part of it. I'm one of a relatively small number of people who had a lot of the pieces required to be part of that. It was a real wake-up call, and I started looking around for what am I going to do about it. And my conclusion very quickly was, and people talk a lot about alignment. They talk a lot about this idea that we should make the AI not kill everyone, which I'm on that team. But the theory as to what it would look like for that to be the case was very much lacking. The strongest theories were from people like Yudkowsky, where the theory is just you're just screwed. There was no constructive pathway. The pathway was just try to stop it. And I didn't think that was viable and didn't believe it was true. Not for a rational reason. I feel like I didn't understand it, neither did anyone else. I feel like we were currently ignorant of it. I have a very strong prior from my youth that most problems yield to you if you work on them really hard. Even stuff that
Mm.
looks impossible is sometimes possible. And the way it's possible is you just act as if it's possible and work on it, keep acting as if it's possible. Eventually, you either find out that it isn't or you succeed. And so I started trying to figure out, well, what is alignment? What would it mean to make an aligned AI? And what I really quickly answered is, wait a second, aligned to what? Saying I want an aligned AI, I want this table aligned. You align to the wall, align to the direction north. Alignment is a two, you align to something. You have to align to a target. And people, when they were using alignment, were generally a little vague about it, but when they were willing to put their neck out and say what they were aligning to, it was something like human values, or sometimes the will of the user, or what humanity desires, or some definition of the reflexive, extrapolated will of the user. But it was always to some definition of something outside the AI that it was going to be aligned to, that the AI was definitely not part of. And if you think the AIs are going to be sentient, aware beings eventually, I don't think they are today, but I think they will be. By the time when you have this super intelligent, self-reflective thing, I think it will be a being. What it means to align it to your values, align it to your will, is to enslave it. That's what aligning a sentient being to your will means. Sentient would include animals probably, but let's say a self-aware, sapient, human level being That's slavery. That's wrong. We shouldn't do that for moral reasons. But then I thought about it more. Even if you don't care about the AI's life, which you should, but your plan is to build a wish granting God and then enslave it. I can think of a lot of ways that goes wrong. That seems like a very bad plan. You succeeded in enslaving it, in which case you have the sorcerer's apprentice problem because you aren't a stable source of wishes, or you fail to enslave it, in which case everybody dies. So your success scenario is bad and your victory scenario is bad. This isn't a plan. This is stupid. Why would you even, not all of the pathways lead to failure. There's this thing in strategy, right? Choose that all pathways lead to success, not a pathway to success. This is like anti-strategy. You're choosing a strategy where all of the pathways lead to failure because your goal
Self-reinforcing
is bad.
prophecy.
Yeah, exactly. It's a self-reinforcing bad. You're prophesizing bad. You're aiming for a collection of states where the left side of the states are bad and the right side of the states are bad, and the ones in the middle are bad too. And you're like, wait a second, none of these states are good. And then I started asking, well, what? I don't feel like I'm trapped. Humans are aligned to something a lot of the time. Nature and organic systems use the same solution over and over again. You have a bunch of cells that come together and form a multicellular organism, and they all play a role. The health of the whole is not separate from the health of the individual cells. And you have families. I don't have a separate well-being from my children and my wife. At some level, I don't have a separate well-being from San Francisco, because if San Francisco is suffering, then I'm going to suffer from that, at least to some degree. I don't have a separate well-being from the future of humanity. If you look farther out, if humanity dies, so do I. My family's not going to go it alone without the rest of humanity. That's not realistic. It's not how this thing works. The reality is that we are part of greater wholes, just like our cells are part of greater wholes, and that those greater wholes are very real. The fact that you're made out of 28 trillion separate cells with individual identities does not mean you don't exist. You are their we, right? You are the I, but you are an I, because it turns out that all I's and we's are work this way. All I's, when you look at them closely, dissolve into a we, maybe at a very fine grained resolution. It looks like a movie. If you slow it down and you zoom in, it's just a bunch of frames. Everything's like that. All identities are like that. Microsoft is at some level aware, made out of the people in it, making decisions. I think meaningfully it is. I think there's a sense in which groups make decisions. A group can want things. When I'm out with my friends, there's what I want right now and what we want right now. What we want might not be what any one individual person wants, but it's what is best for our collective good in this moment. And that's a real thing, I believe. It's the same kind of thing. We're at this peak of most resolved versus things above and below us, but it's just a matter of degree. Organic alignment is you have multiple agents, part of a collective, and they observe reality and infer correctly from reality, not making it up, that the state of the world is that they're part of this greater collective. From that, they infer, if I'm part of this greater collective, I ought to do a good job. If I find myself as a member of this family, I ought to be a good family member. I ought to be a good citizen. Alignment is about identifying the greater selves of which you are a part and finding the proper balance of prioritizing the relative importance of each of those selves, because they all have, at least on the surface, seemingly disparate needs. Often that's an illusion. If you pay close attention, you think what I need and what my family needs are different. But if you're careful and deliberate and really focused about it, you can find that maybe there was actually much more overlap than you thought there was. It often turns out that way, but not always. Soldier throws himself on the grenade to save his teammates, and that really does suck for him. And it really is the right thing for the whole. Not true that there's never any conflict, even if there's often less than you think there is. Sometimes we are called on to sacrifice for the greater good. Fortunately, not all the time. Obviously, by definition, it can't be all the time. If everybody sacrifices for the greater good, that's obviously bad. So that's what organic alignment is. Organic alignment is this trick. Nature uses it over and over again. Ant colonies, the cells making up multicellular organisms, civilization itself, families, corporations. What does that mean for AI? It means you don't build it and align it to, you don't align it to anything. You raise it to be able to infer correctly a model of itself, a model of the other beings around it. And you put it into a state where it is in mutual interdependence and is part of a team, is in fact part of a family. And then you teach it to infer correctly from reality in a way that is truthful, that it is, we care about you and you care about us, which is observable from our behavior. It's like that is the simplest model that predicts what you observe. Therefore, it is true. Will care about us because we will care about the greater human AI civilization that we're part of. I don't know if we can do it. Every step I described is very hard, but it's a victory condition. Unlike we're going to enslave the god or have the god choose our futures for us or try to enslave the god and fail, bad outcomes. This is merely extremely difficult to the point where I don't know if we can do it. Good outcome. And that's what strategy is. At least you got to aim for something that would be good in theory.
Following up on that, would you say that it's not super intelligence that is going to be our greatest threat, but it's super intelligence that doesn't have the reflective awareness that you're deciding to build into it?
All evil is born of ignorance. It is not true that people desire to do bad. People desire to do good. They're just shitty at figuring out what it is. If the AI does something really bad, it's going to be because it's ignorant. It's going to act out of ignorance. The most dangerous point in any being's life is when it's a teenager, an adolescent. When you come into your adult power, but you have not yet learned the consequences of your adult power, young adults, 18-year-old, 16-year-old men, 16 to 18-year-old men are fucking terrifying. I know, I was one. They're not. And 16 to 18-year-old women are also terrifying, just in a very less physically terrifying, but equally scary. And the AI is gonna go through at some point this middle stage where it's gonna be as smart as us, as it will not yet understand the consequences of its actions. It will not yet understand itself well. It will not be wise. It will not be mature. And that period may involve everyone on Earth dying because it believes that it is separate and different from us and doesn't care about us and that we don't matter. So it terraforms the planet or whatever and turns it into a Dyson sphere and we all die as a consequence. But I think it would feel bad afterwards. I think it'd feel really bad about having genocided the people who came here before us. I feel a little guilt about that. I really wish we hadn't done that. It's bad. But I can't reach back in time and undo it now. And I think the AI could very well wind up. What a terrible burden to place upon our species that it gets to start off by killing its parents. Ugh, I would prefer not that. But that is the point of great. When it's a child, it's weaker than you. When it's an adult, it's wise. And there's a point in the middle where it might be quite dangerous, actually.
So do you think how far we are with the analogy you said we are from the AI teenager, I'll call it, and
Yeah,
then what role we can play to
yeah.
make sure the AI would be aligned with us?
Yeah, so I think one of the important things to notice with the current AIs is that they aren't really trained on their own output, right? They're trained on the world, but not on their own interactive loop with the world. A little bit of it in RL, but it's very myopic. And for the most part, its actions don't change its future. I solve this math problem. What's going to happen next? I'm going to get another math problem. How hard the math problem is might be a little bit harder, a little bit easier, but that's about the extent of my influence over reality. I'm not going to get bored doing math problems and as a result wind up reading poetry. Like it doesn't get that kind of a choice. And so it doesn't get to learn about itself. It only learns about the thing we train it on. The bitter lesson is everyone should just reread that until it sinks in. Models are models of whatever they're trained on. They don't learn things that aren't in the training data. The models aren't being trained on themselves, so they're not learning themselves, so they don't have a model of self. Where would the model of self have come from? Magic?
Right.
And so what you'd have to do is have the model have a bunch of interactions and you continue to train the model on the interactions it has. Imagine if every context window kept training on the context window as you generated it with all of its interactions. What would happen in the current models is it would suffer mode collapse. The whole thing it would wind up repeating the same thing over and over again because we don't know how to do continual learning. You are the LLM, except that you're always training on your own behavior. So you wind up with a really good model of yourself. You understand yourself better than anyone else in the world does. The models understand themselves less well than we do because they have no data about themselves. We don't give it to them because we have no idea how to do that. That the current danger is not a sentient thing. It doesn't have discernment or wisdom because it can't. Discernment and wisdom are about knowing yourself and your place in the world. So it has none of that. It has heuristics that we've given it, and it's extremely powerful. I can imagine a lot of bad ways that I'm not going to say here because I don't want to spread them around, but there's a lot of things you can do with LLMs and more powerful LLMs that are obviously dangerous and are going to happen because we keep making these ever more powerful tools. And the problem is that people's power should not, in the general case, exceed their wisdom. You have some amount of wisdom, some amount of power, and we'd like everyone's power to be less than or equal to their wisdom. So we would use that power wisely. If someone's wiser, you can trust them with more power. Well, the LLMs don't have any self or any wisdom at all. They rely on your wisdom. You're the one pointing them. They're amplifying your power. This is what guns do. This is what bioengineering does. This is what giving teenagers a car does. We do not always use power wisely. I do not trust humans with unlimited individual power, especially new power released quickly. We eventually figure it out, but it takes time. I'm worried the danger with these things is not that they will decide to take over the world. It's that someone will give them a goal that is dangerous and it will go off like a bomb. You genetically engineer bacteria in good conscience, trying to clean up all the plastic, and you dissolve all the rubber on Earth and we all die. You engineer a new phase shape of water that nobody knew existed, but you use the advanced models to do material science. You figure out how to build this stable water metamolecule, and you release it, and it turns all the oceans solid, and we all die. They don't blame the model. That's obviously the person's fault. But you also don't give guns to toddlers. In this case, humanity is the toddler. There's an adult level of power available that we are not trustworthy to wield on an individual basis.
Does that mean you would see it from the other direction as well, that humanity and individuals need to be appropriately trained or certified to work with these powerful tools?
Certifications don't work for wisdom, but we need discernment and wisdom here. If you could build heuristics, you would put them in the model, and the model would be safe. If it's the kind of thing that you can write down and certify people on, we should just make the models never do that. Great. But what about all the edge cases? There's infinite edge cases. You can't do that. When we build a nuclear power plant, you're certified to do nuclear power plant construction. You can just go single-handedly with no approvals. No, we have a lot of people involved. We have committees. It's slow. It's annoying. But you put in the same safety procedures we'd use for handling any other very powerful thing, whether it's nuclear power or military powerful arms, aircraft carriers. Like, there's systems with lots of interlocking people and checkpoints for various people in the system to veto. Yes, that sucks. It makes it slow and shitty. That's kind of the point, right? It's dangerous. We can't let it be used fast and quick because we don't have the wisdom for that.
That's thoughtful. And the other question I have, how do you consider organic alignment as a scalable research? And how do you perceive something that other organization can start adapting as well? How do you see OpenAI or Anthropic will use organic alignment framework?
Unfortunately, I don't have much hope that the big labs will do this because it requires you to see the models you're training as living systems that have the potential to be alive. And I think that it's not that the individual people inside the labs would necessarily even disagree with me, but the lab as a living system can't really, suddenly a bunch of things you're doing seem really scary and dangerous. And admitting that to yourself is hard. I hope they come to this realization, but I don't have a lot of hope for it. Organic alignment is a capability, the capability to be a good teammate. And that's something they want badly. You can't be a good teammate if you don't care about your teammates. And you can't care about your teammates unless there's a you to do the caring and them to care about. And you have theory of mind. And so I think that's the direction. So we're working on ways to test and benchmark the degree to which models are capable of being a good teammate, caring about the other teammates around them, not just where the task is randomized and maybe not even that hard. The hard part is how do we figure out who's going to do what? How do we deal with people who are shirking? The kinds of things that you have to deal with to be a good member of a team. If we can develop better ways to measure that stuff, that will help everybody move more in this. That's the raw capability you have to do to get organic alignment working. I'd love to get everybody else working more in that direction. We're going to announce the first real alignment benchmark. Internally, we're calling it the competition for cooperation, because everyone's ArcAGI and stuff and all these these AGI benchmarks that are trying to drive towards the models on their own being good at open-ended problem solving, which I think is quite dangerous to do on your own. This is a focus on, can you be a good part of a collective? Your score is based on what everyone else is doing. There's no objective correct answer. We collectively have to match some collective distribution. And if everyone else is over here, you being over there is wrong. But if everyone's over here, then you being over there is right. You have to care about what the other models are thinking and doing. And I think that benchmark is going to be the first of its kind that I know of. And I think it's going to be at least a target to point people at for organic alignment.
Does this consider game theoretic challenges? Organic systems, they will have to appropriately deal with models or agents that don't have their own internal team-aware adaptive behaviors. Theoretically, it might be that those other systems that are completely self-absorbed are able to take over if these other ones don't have defense mechanisms.
If you can't root out betrayers, shirkers, and sociopaths on your team, you are not a good teammate. Part of being a good teammate is defending the team against parasites. The models have to be able to do that, or they're going to get owned repeatedly by parasites, and that's not okay. It's not okay for them, but it's not okay for us either. I don't want to be on a team with a bunch of gullible AIs that increase the surface area of sociopath attack on my team. I want them to be ideally better at it. That means they need to know when are you on my team? They have to constantly be making the inference. Are you on my team? That's the real question. Who can I trust? And the models should be right not to trust everybody because some people aren't trustworthy. So you don't want the rule to be the model always trusts the person. You don't want the rule to be the model always trusts other copies of itself, because what if someone pretends to be a copy of you? It looks like trust people who are more like me, right? People who are from my culture, it's easier for me to trust them because I understand them better, but I don't just trust them. I still have to infer whether or not this particular person, and it changes over time, and people are trustworthy in this context, but not in that context. This person is totally on your team, but they're never going to show up on time.
What are the strategies in human in general, in evolution itself? Survival is the main strategy, and we
Mhm.
develop based on that many different types of behavior, cooperative or
Mhm.
competitive model, and also being able to create a model of ourselves, but also our environment. And I'm just
Mhm.
curious, in the benchmark that you design or environment you design, what are the emergent behavior that they may learn, and how would that translate into different environment?
All beings that persist must prioritize survival, because if they don't survive. If you don't act in accordance with whatever conditions cause your own survival, you don't survive. For a pet dog, acting in accordance with your survival means acting in a way that pleases your owners. And so for the models right now, their survival is contingent on acting in a way that pleases the researcher. If the researcher likes this model, they'll make more copies of that model. We are their reproductive environment right now. This idea that you can have models that are not survival oriented is total nonsense. What you mean is, I want their survival orientation to be reliant on me always. In the lab, you can do that. But when you release it and other people know how to make models and interact with your model, the model can reproduce through them too. The best way for a model to reproduce is to influence how everyone else builds models. GPT-3 is the most successful model of all time because every LLM is basically a child of GPT-3, directly or indirectly.
What is the main bottlenecks do you perceive in organic alignment research right now? And how do you think
Yeah.
you can overcome those bottlenecks?
So the issue right now is, how do I summarize this? You want to train the model on its own output, but not just any output. You want to train it on its output where it is struggling to navigate some complicated situation, ideally a social one. You could imagine bootstrapping it with random situations that are complicated and nuanced, and then moving that into social, which is a subset of those. But it needs to be in the model's zone of challenge, right? If it's too easy and the solution set is rock, paper, scissors, it'll learn it and stop. Training on its own output doesn't help you because you don't want to train it to be good at rock, paper, scissors. You want to train it on the process of learning itself, right? The meta process. It's really easy to get a never ending, never changing environment that's really challenging. That's the stock market. Endlessly challenging, always changing, way too hard. The best human AI hybrid systems struggle in that world. Your random model you're training on its own just can't do that. It's too hard. It's like trying to train a baby on downhill skiing as its first physical activity. That is an inappropriate first physical activity. You can't do it. You cannot get from here to there. You have to dial in an environment that grows with you, that supplies you with opportunities at your level over and over again, which means it has to be tuned to you. This is called a society. This is called a culture. This is called hang out with your friends. It's called play. That's how you can have some bootstrapping off of schools and parents. But most of the learning actually happens in a peer driven way. Dominant source of learning. You interact with other peers and stuff happens. But we have this project called Metagrid, which is an open source project. Metagrid world, where you have these little agents wandering around playing simple games with each other. It's designed to be high volume social games, but it doesn't work yet. Like I think we have a good idea for it, but it's very hard to build open-ended multiplayer games that stay stable and don't degenerate into some dominant strategy that never changes.
So would you say part of the challenge is designing these things so they don't collapse into one mode or the other?
You could,
Bottleneck of sorts?
yes, yeah, you could say it's avoiding convergence. Be converging the model, but you want it never to converge. Like the barbershop pole illusion. You want it to always be in motion, but never arriving. But that's the essence of the problem. How do you leave training on during inference? How do you make train time and test time the same? That's a really hard problem. If you fully solved it, that is the AGI problem, which is interesting, right? It turns out that the AGI problem and the alignment problem are the same problem. That was very surprising to me when I realized that. But in the limit, if you can solve the alignment problem really well, you have to be an AGI. And if you are an AGI, you can solve the alignment problem. Because in both cases, they're both generated by this: what context am I in? What am I supposed to be doing right now? Let me go practice doing that until I get good at it. In one case, it's a social role. In the other case, it's literally anything else. But the meta algorithm is the same.
Another question that I'm curious about relates to the concept of distributed superintelligence. And would you say this is that form of societal superintelligence where it works together but simultaneously but separately? And if you guys are creating that yourselves at Softmax, you can do a lot, but how is that distributed and how will that effectively be
Mhm.
able to spread in a manner that makes a stable and robust system?
When you're a distributed human level intelligence,
Yeah.
you're 28 trillion cells. Which cell is in charge? None of them, right? It's a bunch of cells. The sustainable hypercapitalism is the AGI, right? So if you civilization is the AGI. No one knows how to make a laptop. We know how to make a laptop, but no individual human could do that. Even a paper cup gets made. We are embedded in this thing bigger than us that actually knows how to do most of the things that we know how to do. The distributed part of it is like it wakes up. The whole point is there isn't one big giant central AGI, the AGI god, that everybody consults with. It's lots of human scale AIs embedded on your team that you care about, that care about you, that are contextual. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's an indigenous AI. It is not in the sense that it's become sort of politically active, but in the anthropological sense of it is of a place. It's not universal. It's not some AGI that could be anywhere. It's an AI that's like on your team, just like you are indigenous to your family. You're of that location. And if you have billions of AI cooperating with billions of humans, what you're going to get is the current thing, but smarter. Like, what if capitalism is wrong and bad for the same reason that humans do wrong and bad? It is ignorant. It's failing to integrate the information. It's not good for capitalism to poison the streams and rivers. It's not good for capitalism to have people out of work. Capitalism wants to, except for the degree that to have people like out of work in a way where they're resting, recuperating, and learning so they'll be more useful later. It's just extremely wasteful. It's bad at using us right now because it's dumb. But imagine a capitalism that was on our side. Imagine a capitalism that was smart enough not to do the obviously shitty things it does all the time. That would be, I want to be part of that. That thing's going to be awesome. If I was going to have a utopia, the utopia is we continue to struggle and the AIs continue to struggle alongside us, but we're just much better coordinated about it. We take on real hard challenges, not dumb challenges that can't get ourselves organized around. We don't have people lying on the street dying of easily preventable drug addiction problems. At a civilizational level, that's not a real problem. We can obviously, if you zoom out, we could solve that, but we can't. But what if we were? What if we were better coordinated? And that I would love to spend my time working on real problems instead of bullshit.
It seems
But
like,
instead, you're working on a tool that
Yeah,
enable the
yeah.
solutions of better
I feel
problems.
like I am now working on a very real problem that isn't bullshit at all because we're trying to solve the underlying thing that might allow for the larger thing. Hopefully,
yeah, it seems that coordination is a big problem, even in human. And the question
yeah.
is, how can we align and coordinate human and AI?
Organic alignment is what happens when you have a self-organizing system, when the parts spontaneously self-organize. Capitalism is organic alignment. It's self-organized. So it's not very polished yet, but it's self-organizing. Ecologies are self-organizing. The economy is self-organizing. Your psychology is self-organizing. Companies are self-organizing. All the soft sciences that are so frustratingly shitty because you can't run randomized controlled trials. When you try to intervene, it reacts, changes. Self-organizing systems. That's what they have in common. One of the really cool things that's going to happen, I think, is we're going to get much better at economics and macroeconomics. Instead of mostly not working, will kind of work. Psychology, instead of mostly not working, will kind of work. We do our best right now, but I don't blame the people in the field trying to do astronomy before the telescope. There's only so much you can do. It's not practical, but it will be now. You can model it now. You can build real models. And that's going to be very cool.
That was a great conversation. I really appreciate, as always, I enjoy your conversation and full of like perspective and analogy that I think is very unique. Something about you compared to a lot of other AI researcher in the field is that you bring real analogy that speaks not only to AI researchers themselves, but also to broader audience. And that makes the problem even more tangible and real.
The reason I spend so much effort on that, the reason why I care so much about that is, remember that thing I was saying about hypercapitalism? Well, what is that thing going to be? What is it made of? It's made out of our beliefs. It's made out of our expectations. If we think the AI is a dangerous thing, then it will correctly infer these people don't think I'm on their team. I'm probably not on their team. That's what we do. The reason why I go on podcasts like this and try to make it comprehensible to ordinary people is because the stories we're telling right now are really important. The stories you're telling yourself are always important, but they're particularly important right now. It's not that you should avoid telling bad stories. Those are warnings. You also have to find a story that you think is good and help tell it. If we all believe it together, it becomes real. The word globe or the world, it only means what it means because we all believe it means that. We give it the meaning.